One of the issues, and oddly, I've received emails and messages from people who are promoting the Russian narrative here, people who claim to be from Australia and various other places, whose English is actually quite good, who are taken in by this Russian fiction that the atrocity in Bucha was manufactured by the Azov brigade or by Ukrainians in general, and was not something that was done by Russian troops. The satellite images were posted by the BBC, I think, to show that the bodies were lying in the streets for days, and that they were found in the exact same places where the Ukrainian forces found them when they took control of the town just north of Kyiv. And I think it's extraordinary that that Russian propaganda should have been so persuasive of a small group of people. This claim that the Bucha story was about faked dead bodies, or that the victims of the Bucha atrocity, were killed by Ukrainians rather than by Russian troops. It's something that Ukrainians believe happened on the 31st of March, as Russia withdrew its forces from around Bucha, and Russia claims that Ukraine staged the atrocity after its troops left the town. Well, the easy way to clear that up, and the reason I mention this, is because this was one of the omissions in Carlson Tuck, whatever his name is, Tucker Carlson, in Tucker Carlson's interview the other night. That would have been a wonderful opportunity for Putin to say, yes, it was all faked. We know, we have the evidence. But he didn't. So for somebody to now turn round and say, but we don't know. We don't know it was faked. And we certainly don't know that the people who were killed in Bucha were killed by Ukrainians. In fact, what we know and what we suspect is that they were killed by Russians. And until that suspicion is confirmed, indeed, there has been an investigation, there's been evidence collected and sent on to international courts, I believe. So this extraordinary high tone that people take and say, you must be mad saying this. How can you claim to be an authority? I don't claim to be an authority. I simply claim to have an opinion. But I am fairly dismissive, I know, of people who put forward propaganda based on extraordinary claims and repeat the stuff that I have seen again and again and again repeated. And those stories, the waves of propaganda that are put forward by Russia are waves of propaganda. They have a point when they begin, and they have a point when they hit the internet, and they have a point when they sort of get rebuffed. And just like the claim that Johnson stopped the peace initiative, which started sometime in the middle of last year, long after the Johnson meeting, so too the claim that the Bucha atrocity, first the claim was that it was faked, and then more recently the claim is that it was carried out by Ukrainians themselves. Completely absurd. If it was carried out by Ukrainians themselves and Russia knew, how does Russia know, and how is it that Russia suddenly puts forward this claim about a year after the event? This is part of a propaganda initiative manufactured by people like Zakharova, and it has no substance. And to be parroted by people simply because there are lots of names of people in the comments section saying, you are mad if you don't believe Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin is the greatest thing since sliced bread, blah, blah, blah. And all these people sound as if they've got wonderful Anglo-Saxon names. Yeah, it doesn't take very much digging to find that many of these people's YouTube identities were created very recently. And the names don't strike me as terribly authentic. And there are also people who say, yes, I'm Russian and I know what's going on, and you're right, and thank you very much for that. They also probably have fake names because they're protecting themselves, and very good too, and they should be very careful about what they post. But the Russian propaganda factories, the troll factories, I'm not surprised I've attracted a bit of that. I'm not surprised at all. As for my idea that Mr. Putin is dead, well, there's quite an elaborate story about this, and Putin himself has not provided enough evidence to suggest that he is genuinely alive. But I was for a moment quite taken in by that interview. I'm sympathetic to the twitching and the foot jerking, but no amount of jerks and no amount of twitches is going to convince me absolutely that this person is genuinely Mr. Putin. And somebody says, oh, this person didn't need to read from an auto cue. No, he didn't. He learnt his stuff. But I'm sure there was an auto cue just off screen, as there could easily have been an auto cue just off screen to indicate when Tucker Carlson's next cue was. I'm not convinced that Tucker Carlson has a very tiny earpiece. I'm certainly not convinced he speaks Russian. And as for the idea that Mr. Putin speaks perfect English, well, you haven't heard him, have you? I have heard him. His English is very hesitant, and he may understand more than he can actually articulate. But the idea that Mr. Putin speaks perfect English is codswallop.